guys, welcome to Sanditon Fancast. I'm your host, Rita. I live in England. I'm at Annoying Rita on Instagram and Twitter. And this is a bonus podcast where we read out your emails and discuss what you thought of the episode. Now, as you might be aware, we had a few technical issues this week, so I'll be doing this bonus podcast alone as Michelle sips Mai Tais and sunbathes on her cruise lounger. I know it's a hard knock life, but someone has to stay here and dig through the inbox, and that's me. Be prepared to listen to my voice for a very long time. I know I will find it annoying, but hopefully you'll be entertained. Okay, first postcard. Hi Michelle and Rita. I just recently found your podcast preparing to watch season 3. Like many fans, I found Sanditon during the pandemic when I was desperate for more Regency content and couldn't watch Bridgerton for the 6th time. I didn't get into it at first but grew to love it for its unconventional ending, fiery feminist Charlotte, and quite shocking character arc for Esther, who was easy to dismiss as a Caroline Bingley evil stepsister but grew to have the depth of a heroine. I knew your podcast was for me because of your quick wit, hot takes, and our shared values for workers' rights and agreement that Tom is an utter arse. Sweet Arthur deserves the world. I knew I had to write in when I finally got my shit together, looked you up on Instagram and saw that Michelle is practically my neighbour. Squee! Hi Michelle, I live in Ballard. I'd love to know how you both met. I'm imagining a pole dart convention where both of you forged a bond while heckling a trial reenactment. I watched 3 seasons and that was enough. Sorry, not sorry. We have 1 episode to go in Sanditon and I'm simultaneously enthralled and annoyed. Maybe that's my perpetual state of 40-year-old. I agree with you both that not every character needed a frickin' storyline and love interest. I'm loving that Charlotte has got her groove back with her feminist speeches about a woman not being ruined because she has sex. And Colborne actually listening? Swoon. What a turn on. I've been thinking about a meta theme of identity, wondering if you'd weigh in. In season 1, Sydney famously said that he is his truest self when he is with Charlotte. She has this effect on all her love interests, for better or worse. Young Stringer was inspired to apply to the apprenticeship. Colonel Lennox showed his true colours, yuck, and now Xander has positively blossomed under her influence. But for Charlotte, Sanditon is that character. In Sanditon, she is her truest self. She has been exposed to so many new people and ideas, and it has strengthened her authenticity and convictions. It's why poor Ralph doesn't recognise her there. So here's my question. Do we think this show is saying that women can inspire the best in people, aka you can change a man, or is it more hold your values in a way that inspires others to rise to their potential? Or none of the above? It's a show based on 11 unedited Austen chapters, and just enjoy the ride, babe. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on the final, and we'll be watching for what is next. This is from Constance from Seattle. Thank you, Constance. I wish Michelle were here, but as I said earlier, she is off sunbathing. She got out of Seattle. But I think, as for how we met, it was on Tumblr. Back in the good old days of Tumblr, where I just said, hey, I'm going to do a podcast. Who wants to get involved? Michelle answered, and that's how we met. Wish it was a convention. We would have rocked that shit. Potentially ruined it for everyone else. As for what I think the show is trying to say about being able to change a man, it's kind of wishy-washy. In some respects, I think it's trying to tell women just to be the best versions of themselves and stand up for themselves and advocate for themselves, and by being that version you will attract your true love or whatever. But then sometimes it's about changing a man for the better, isn't it? Because the writing is somewhat inconsistent. Next, postcard. Hi girls. I wanted to say that until last week's episode, I'd been unable to watch the entire episodes because I'm in London, and the whole VPN situation was too difficult for me. Then I started listening to your not-so-brief summary of the episode as a radio novella, and it was a really cool experience. You guys described the scenes very well, and I can imagine everything. In last week's episode, when you narrated the Duke's mother taking him out of the closet, I found myself saying to the radio, I can't believe it. She knows? She did not say that. Oh my god. And what did he answer, Michelle? It was a very wonderful experience. I felt like I was living in the 1930s at the height of radio and radio novellas, especially with you guys making the sound of the sea with your mouth. I mean, whoosh. I forgot to do that at the start of this, but we'll forgive me. They continued. Thank God I found a link to watch this week's episode because it had the best scene of my life. Thank you, Sanditon, for giving me Edward humiliating and throwing in Augusta's face all the truths that she was trying not to see. Thank you very much. I couldn't believe it when he started talking. I screamed with happiness and then I clapped. Now that doesn't put me in a very good light. After all, that scene was pure evil, but I loved it nonetheless. Every second, every word, and the scornful expression on his face. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he did the right thing because of his good heart or that this redeems him. He is irredeemable, but I have to confess that of all his scenes with Augusta since the beginning of the season surprised me because of the subtext, for I had seen this type of trope several times before. This arc was already used in Sanditon, in the first season with Charlotte and Sydney. A couple that I never liked because I always saw her as a girl and him as a man. They were never the same. But with Edward and Augusta, we could clearly see that Edward wasn't redeemed himself. He was just realizing how easy it was to deceive her and how naive she was. Because in the show, he had only deceived two people, Esther and Clara, and with both of them he had a lot of work to be able to handle both at the same time. And yet they saw the truth in the end and turned the table on him. I think for him they were like playing a game of chess with two champions. All three were there to win. The three were on the same level. In Clara's case, she wasn't innocent. In the first episode, we saw her giving him a handy in the woods. Then she burns herself in the shower and fucks him to celebrate Lady D's death. As for Esther, I really think he was in love with her, and that if he had money, he would have married her. He would have cheated on her a bunch too, truth be told, but he would have got married. Even because he didn't take her virginity and they lived alone. Of course, he had the whole thing about declaring her crazy on the second season, but then I think it was jealousy and rejection, not because she got married, but because she fell in love with her husband and got the inheritance at the same time. So I think when he comes across Augusta, who after everything is still creating a parallel reality where he is good, it's the first time he's actually playing chess with someone who doesn't even know the rules. It's the first time he can't give himself a good excuse of I'm screwing her because she screwed me first, or something like that. But I don't think he gave up the marriage for the good of his heart. I think he realizes that she's going to come home to make things the right way with her uncle's approval. And the uncle will have a month to organise the wedding, and in that time, Xander can make the teenager see the truth. Or he can create ways for him not to receive her dowry, or other things to make his life difficult. Not to mention, when they got back, he has to deal with Lady Denham. So he knows this isn't going to end well for him, and he decides to finish it early, and at the same time teach this dreaming teenager a little bit of reality. I really loved him saying to her, "How could you be so naive?" Because it was me screaming at her and the teenager I once was, because I know that me, you, and the listeners of the podcast have all had our share of stupidity in adolescence. I'm going to have to disagree with you guys because, again, I'm right and you guys are wrong. I saw that there are a lot of people upset with Charlotte for being engaged to the wrong guy. But let's put aside our anxiety about wanting to see her happy ending with Xander, because it will only happen in the last episode. So let's apply to her story a little of the unfulfilled romantic reality that Edward teaches us in this episode. 1. The advice projection she gives Augusta is bad, but why would we expect her to teach something good to Augusta after we watched season 2 and saw that she was a pretty bad governess? Remember, I am now. She couldn't speak French. She couldn't name any flowers. And she couldn't make Leo wear a dress or even run away. And she even ran away to climb trees. So, of course, she gives bad advice about Edward. Okay, 2. About the engagement. I think this episode they address well the reasons for her to still be engaged, but I think season 2 had already done well. After the glimpse of reality that she received first with the marriage and after with Sydney's death, she still believed that she could only marry if she fell in love, and believing that she would never love another person in her life, she decides to play the independent girl and go to work. Like any 22-year-old girl, she falls in love in 5 seconds for her boss. And again, the more experienced and wealthy guy kissed her, but doesn't declare himself. After that, he fires her in the rudest way possible. He didn't apologise, but says he regrets it to kiss her. In the end, he says if she wants to go back to work, she can. After all, the girls miss her. Oh, God. He doesn't declare his feelings, and if he doesn't do that, she has no reason to believe otherwise, that he feels more than attraction. Because Sydney, who loved her, didn't choose her, so she knows that loving and choosing are totally different things, and as much as we know Xander loves her because they're in an adaptation of Jane Austen, she can't read his mind, since he spends the first 3 episodes of the season looking at her like a lost puppy, saying nothing more than, "The girls miss you." Fuck off, Xander. She isn't a mind reader. Okay. At the end of episode 3, he finally uses the words and asks, "Make her life with me," which is my highlight of the season. Super romantic, but I think it's super fair when she yells at him, "Why didn't you say that before?" He didn't give her an answer, but the reason is that he has the privilege of being a rich man who can ask someone to marry him anytime. He decided he wasn't ready. He got scared and gave himself the privilege of going to Bath to think about it for 6 months of the winter. Oh, God, girl, it's not been 6 months. Sorry to interject, but you know I obsess about the timeline, and it was maybe 1 month at most. This girl hopped into that engagement. Anyway, you continued. In which he comes to the conclusion that he misses her, but does not send her a letter. Nor does he try to locate the farm where she lives. And when he comes back and finds her, he really thinks she was going to be there, her life on hold, waiting for him to unwrap all his daddy issues until he was ready to propose to her. Well, again, it's not really been that long. It's been like, what, 2 weeks since he saw her? The timeline is stupid. Meanwhile, Charlotte comes to the conclusion that there are worse things than marrying someone you don't love. It's continuing to fall in love with guys who don't choose you. It's to keep having your heart broken by one idiot after another. She doesn't have money. She doesn't have a job. Alison reminded her all season 2 she needs to marry because the family don't have money. So she finally gets to the point where she understands why so many women marry without love. So when, finally, in episode 3, he declares himself and asks her to marry him, she doesn't have any reason to believe his feelings are going to last. After that, the guilt hits her. Guilt for having betrayed Ralph and the realization that she has been emotionally betraying him for a long time before that too. In episode 4, I think she starts to realize that she's going to have to take her life apart in order to be with Alexander, and that's scary. I think the delay to go home comes from that, because she knows she's going to get married, but she also knows that this time she's going to be the bad guy who breaks Ralph's heart. In episode 5, I think she realizes that Augusta had the courage that she didn't have. Even throwing everything up for the wrong guy, I think Charlotte sees that Augusta did and remembers Charlotte from the first season before the heartbreak, how she would have already had the courage to end this marriage. You mean engagement. to end this engagement. Because I think that Charlotte from the first season was fearless. She believed she could make a difference. She believed in the power of love. And I think in this episode, when she spends the whole day with Alexander, she realizes that he was sincere. He meant it when he declared himself. I think it's the first time she believed in this change in him. Seeing him giving Augusta the opportunity to choose, I thought it was beautiful and romantic in a realistic way. Because the passion passes and the relationship needs to be built with companionship and seeing the other, something that Xander had not done until then. He'd been pretty selfish just thinking about how hard it was going to be for him to trust someone else again. He even didn't know about her story with Sydney because they'd never talked about her past, just his. She needs to see this change to believe him because she isn't Mary. She won't wait 10 years for marriage to step up and make her will count. So in the end, we see her having the courage to step up, Ralph, and the relationship. And this is from Morgana from Brazil. Thank you for yelling at us, Morgana. I always love it when you tell us off. I think from my perspective, I definitely understood everything Charlotte's gone through psychologically. My problem has always been with the writers deciding to let Charlotte take such a back seat. I want her to be the focal point of every season, and I haven't felt that way. I kind of miss season 2 Charlotte that was she was just as hurt and distrustful as the Charlotte we have now, but she was still more of an active participant in the season. I just want more time with Charlotte as we are nearing the end, you know. Okay, episode 5. You get a loveless marriage, you get a loveless marriage, and you get a loveless marriage. I was a first-class passenger on the struggle bus this week, and I think I want a refund for my ticket. The seat was uncomfortable, and I think the shocks on the bus were broken. I found this episode a bit frustrating and mostly unsatisfying. If I were playing a drinking game, for every time someone said the words loveless marriage or forced by a parent or guardian, I'd have been shit-faced by 8 minutes 37. Sure, there were some excellent moments that I enjoyed very much, but the list of good scenes is kind of short for me this week. It's pretty much confined to anything to do with the Montroses, Susan and Samuel, and a little bit of Harry, Arthur, Georgiana and her mum. Thank God for Lydia, the shining star of the episode. I live for her facial expressions and her dry comments. She's such a perceptive observer, and she sees everything. The look of pure sympathy she was giving Arthur at the beginning was touching, and her reactions make every scene she's in better. The entire dinner was priceless. When her mother said that her children need to spread their wings, and she replied with, "That's very much your credo, Mother," I burst out laughing. Is Lydia the only woman in this show with any common sense left? I think she's about to blow. I can't wait. I love her more every week. Let's talk about the dinner between the Montroses and the Parkers and Georgiana. It was great and frustrating at the same time. It contained, hands down, all of the best performances of the week from everyone at the table. It was funny, awkward as hell, and also emotionally intense. It's probably the only sequence I want to go back and re-watch. I would have preferred much more of this group of people and much less of that man-whore Edward and Charlotte and Colborne's tediousness. Update. I've since gone back and rewatched the dinner before and after scenes, and it's impressive how the entire group is selling this scene in the background, even when they aren't the focal point. Watch it again, but only watch the people in the background as others are talking. Like Harry getting drunk and snorting when his mother says she wishes she had a smaller house. Arthur taking care of Ralph in the doorway when the others are arguing about Colborne. And all the subtle and not so subtle body language and expressions on people's faces. It's just a great sequence all around. Very well done, and some of it's very funny. Harry and Arthur. It was a travesty that we were half an hour into this episode with no sign of Harry yet. When we did get time with him, as usual, they made the most of it and were emoting out of every pore, but it was all very rushed. I'm still not giving up on them finding a way to have some kind of future together, but Arthur being the unicorn in Georgiana and Harry's marriage is just too awkward to contemplate. Or would Georgiana be the unicorn here? I don't even know. But anyway, you look at it, it's just really uncomfortable. Could you imagine the three of them raising Georgiana and Harry's kids together? I could, and it would be adorable. I'm glad Arthur made the decision he did and stood up for himself. It felt true. The moment of desperate hope that he and Harry had when Georgiana made the offer to live together was heartbreaking. Harry's comments to Arthur after were cringeworthy, but I think I was born out of sheer desperation and heartache on Harry's part, and definitely a little too much wine. When Arthur left him crying in the sitting room, I wanted to give him a hug. I know Georgiana is, in the moment, just trying to do something for these two men she cares about. But it was so awkward. This is a tough one all round. As you said, if not for Arthur, this marriage between Georgiana and Harry would not be a bad arrangement. The process of conceiving an heir is not likely to be a ton of fun for either of them, but it can be done. Living as friends who respect each other and know each other's secrets is not a bad gig at all. For an heiress and an aristocrat in this day and age, and their kids would probably have a pretty good life with parents that didn't hate each other. However, there's no way it's going to happen. We know the marriage will be called off next week. I just hope it's a mutual decision by Harry and Georgiana and isn't written as Harry doing a runner or anything like that. Georgiana's had enough men treat her badly. I won't like Harry if he does that, and I don't think Arthur will be able to respect him again if he does. Arthur and Georgiana. I was disappointed in what I got out of their scenes this week. They deserve more. On the other hand, I love that Georgiana knows he's in love with Harry, and in a misguided way is trying to find a silver lining for him. I was touched at the dinner over her offer, even though it was not a good idea. But the comment earlier, if you cannot marry him, why shouldn't I? Oh, that made me cringe on so many levels. Lady Montrose, well, my fandom was fleeting, and all the warm fuzzies have left the building. I think she put in a great performance, and I enjoy her character. She plays this role very well. She's that character you love to hate, and at least I'm entertained by the scenes she's in. Her reaction to Georgiana's mother was classic, and this offer to pay Georgiana's mum is going to blow up in her face. Segue to Georgiana's mother. I struggle a bit here. I'm glad she's here, but it left me feeling uneasy. Not even sure why. I guess I'm not convinced yet that all is well and Georgiana's not going to be hurt. And I don't know if we can trust her. There's only one episode left, so odds are it's all on the up and up. But the writing hasn't convinced me yet. I only believe it'll work out because we literally have about 52 minutes of showtime left. Update. I rewatched some of the scenes with Georgiana's mother and she grew on me pretty quickly. I really liked the casting choice. I wish they had brought her earlier in the season so we could have gotten more used to her and it felt less rushed. It was realistic how she and Georgiana felt like complete strangers and they weren't very comfortable together at first. My problem is that she went from this isn't my mother, I'd know if it was her, to there isn't a doubt in my mind, even faster than when Alison did last year when transferring her affection from Captain Carter to Captain Fraser. All because of a shell necklace. Who doesn't see that coming? Then Georgiana's mother gave her approval for her marriage to Harry. What the fuck? She's been around for like 24 hours at this point, and she is in a position to give approval? Something about that just sat strangely with me. I didn't feel like she and Georgiana were there yet. I would have loved that sentiment if it had come after some relationship building, but it felt out of place here. I really hope the next episode remains just about them and that Otis stays on the periphery. I suspect she's going to leave Sanditon at the end of the episode with her mother and go work with Otis. This would be a nice ride off into the sunset for her. I can handle the show implying she ends up with Otis, and I think this life helping settle other slaves would make her happy. But I don't want to see them reunite on screen. Ditto. It pisses me off that Otis was the one that found Agnes when Georgiana couldn't. It feels like a very heavy-handed plot device. I know you ladies predicted it, but I still hate it. I really like Georgiana standing up for her mother at dinner, and that scene with the Montroses arrive is worth watching over just for Harry and Lydia's face when Agnes is introduced to Lady Montrose. You're not married. How original. But what is with these people and their big public declarations? What the hell was Mary thinking dragging Agnes into the tea room and blindsiding Georgiana in front of everyone? Plus, with no proof at all, she just believes this woman is Agnes and says, if I had the slightest doubt, I wouldn't have brought her to you. What the hell, Mary? You literally met her on your doorstep 5 minutes ago. Mary and Tom, you're no longer the man I married. Well, actually, this is the same Tom we've seen all 3 seasons of Sanditon, so I'm not sure what she's talking about. I don't know what to say about the illness storyline, other than, meh. It's just a plot device to make everyone else realise they're being stupid. Why is everyone hanging out in her room when she's got a contagious illness? I know, it's bothered the shit out of me. Maybe Dr. Fuchs will get to use his stethoscope next week, and can tell Miss Hankins about it later as a little foreplay. Why is it Charlotte and Colborne? These frickin' people and their frickin' unnecessary homemade drama. I'm officially over it. I'm sure my opinion on them is not a popular opinion, and that's okay. I don't begrudge anyone their enjoyment of them, and wouldn't think badly of any fans that love them. But as for me, I'm done with them. The show's done too much damage to their characters for me by making them behave so wishy-washy and melodramatic, and I'm just not invested in their future. I'm tired of them being forced together and still never resolving anything. Plus, it's not like there's even been any doubt that they're going to end up together, so this season has just been a waste of time for them as a couple. This fiction that Charlotte didn't have a choice is really getting on my nerves. I was so irritated through the entire carriage ride to get Augusta, I wanted to slap them both. I just don't believe Charlotte's situation is as hopeless as they're trying to make us think. And this thing gets more tedious each week. In fact, there are some remarkable similarities with Charlotte's victim complex here and Augusta's victim complex last week with Edward. Quote, it's hopeless. My father is forcing me to marry Ralph. Is he, though? Has she ever told him she wants to marry Colborne? Has Colborne made any attempt to reach out to her father? Have they even had a conversation together and tried to figure out how to fix it? Nope. They're just going to sit there and mope and be victims together and not take any damn actions at all, and I hate it so much. What really bothers me about this is that there's been no indication in any past season that Charlotte's family is anything other than a close, loving family. Her father has never been shown as a tyrant. He's always been portrayed as a caring parent. In fact, oh no, my dog's having a nightmare. Gee, you awake? I think she's awake. He let Charlotte go off with strangers to Sanditon in season 1 because she wanted to go so badly, and then let Alison go off to join her in season 2. I'm just not buying this story that they're heavy-handedly forcing her to marry against her will, and then that makes the Charlotte's whole victim position fall apart. Charlotte could be one of Lockhart's lawyers with weak, unfounded arguments like this. And as for the ending of the engagement between Ralph and Charlotte, well, at least Ralph is not a jerk. But unfortunately, he's the only one with any backbone in this relationship, and that's very disappointing. It irritated me to no end that yet again, it's not Charlotte taking control of anything or making a decision. Even when she's forced together with Xander in the carriage, it's still just her reacting to things other people are saying and doing for her. Rita and Michelle, you are correct in your comments in your podcast from last week. She has regressed as a character, and the writers have really done her a disservice. She has become a passenger in her own story, and she's now turned into Fanny Price, whom I dislike, who basically just sits in the corner and wilts and waits for things to happen. Insipid. I don't like it. I also think she got off too easy here. Charlotte could have redeemed herself a bit in my eyes if she had been the one to tell Ralph the truth, instead of him figuring it out, also with no help from her, and letting her off the hook. He's officially this season's Mr. Congeniality. Rowley and Lady D. There's no way this marriage is happening. Lady D is going to punch him in the nuts soon or something with the awful way he talks to her. She's got more self-worth than that. I look forward to her giving him the boot because it's going to be epic. She's not capable of doing anything less than epic. I don't know if he's scamming her, as others have suggested, but you may be right. His urgency to marry is bizarre and gives me the heebie-jeebies. Edward and Augusta. I really don't have much to say about them. I've said it all before, and I think I'm done with talking about Edward. He's still a creep. He made one decent decision in a long line of manipulative decisions. Whoop-de-doo. Can we just hope that this means that he and Augusta will be very, very minor characters in the final episode, because we have a lot of shit to wrap up next week and we don't need any more of their story. Period. Susan and Samuel were a bright spot in an otherwise dreary journey. They didn't really contribute anything here, and I 100% agree with Rita and Michelle from last week saying that there are way too many storylines and we could cut this one. I like their moment a lot, but I could have done without it and easily given 5 more minutes to Georgiana and Arthur. Overall, I just don't feel like the writers are handling the limited time left very well. Next week, it'll be all about broken engagements. So many of them. Calling off marriages. Some will be more dramatic than others. This is from Tara. Thank you, Tara. Everything you write is on point, and I love hearing what you have to say. Thank you for writing it. Hello, Michelle and Rita. I really enjoyed this episode and feel less frustrated with Charlotte and Colborne. They did talk this episode, but it was all subtext in regards to what was happening with Augusta. The silence between Colborne and Charlotte when she is dropping off at the Parker's house was electric. The way Charlotte was looking at him was so loving and sad. And I'm like, girl, just end it with Ralph, please. Tell Xander you love him. I'm screaming this at the TV. I loved Colborne's speech to Augusta by supporting her if she truly wanted to marry Edward. Edward must have had a change of heart when he heard the speech and decided not to marry Augusta and did something right for once in his life. This doesn't redeem him, but maybe he's starting to care for others and not just himself. My favourite couple was Arthur and Harry. I feel so sad that Arthur has to endure this fake engagement between Georgiana and Harry. Harry and Arthur are great together. I'm so glad that Georgiana's mother was introduced, but I wish they had done this earlier in the season. Poor Ralph. I always liked him. I wish they did not drag this engagement out for almost the entire season. Charlotte ending it was sad, but was long overdue. I did like how Mary's illness and Tom's despair over Mary made Charlotte realise that Colborne is the one she should marry. I think Charlotte compared what Tom said to Mary when she was sick to what Colborne told her on the cliff in episode 3 and realised he truly loved her and had to end it with Ralph. I mean, she didn't end it with Ralph, babes. Ralph ended it with her. I'm just saying. Charlotte should have ended the engagement in episode 3. Can't wait to listen to your podcast this episode. Are you going to do podcasts for Netflix's Queen Charlotte? Take care and have a good day. This is Delia from Austin. Yes, we're planning on doing Queen Charlotte. I mean, I'm a little terrified. Quite honestly, these podcasts have been exhausting me because we've been doing 2 weekly, and the thought of going straight into Netflix's Queen Charlotte without a resting period is giving me anxiety. But I will cope. I will survive. I will pour my heart and soul into them. My only request is that you all give me 5 stars because I'm just such a little martyr. Okay. Next postcard. Hey ladies. Good Lord, what will the good town of Sanditon throw at Charlotte and Xander? to try and halt the inevitable draw to each other. Fireworks? Yes. Runaway teenage girls? Yes. Scheming male suitors? Yes. Pushy mamas forcing their daughters on Xander? Yes. Raging fever plague? Yes. And let's not forget Ralph, stalking about in the streets. But I think Samuel said it best. Never underestimate the power of denial. Oh, isn't that the truth? Charlotte and Alexander and Samuel and Susan. Sage words indeed. I must say the speech by Alexander to Augusta after catching up with them was a masterstroke to test Edward and Charlotte. Xander telling Augusta that she was capable of great things and making good choices. Did Alexander just call Edward's bluff? He looked a bit terrified, prickling his conscience a bit, fingers crossed. But back to Alexander. Who was he kidding? His eyes said it all. Charlotte, please stand up. Please, enough of this slow burn. Well, it turns out it took Ralph to put on his big boy pants. Take note, Mr. Tom Parker, and face up to the reality of the situation. Thank you, sir, for forcing Charlotte to finally say out loud what everyone, even from way over in Willingdon, could see. Phew. Now let's hope Mary will wake to happy news all around. Can't wait to see the result of the Great Mother's throwdown in the hallway. Pretty sure Lydia will have the popcorn out watching. Till next week, ciao, Maria from Australia. Ciao, Maria. Okay, next postcard. Hi, Rita and Michelle. Another week, another episode, another podcast. I am pumped. Love listening to all the letters from Sanditon in the bonus podcast each week. I'm so sad we're almost at the end. Episode 5 is my favourite so far. I felt like we got to breathe in this episode, let the scenes take us on a journey rather than being jolted back and forth between a million storylines. But in Sanditon fashion, my thoughts in this email will bounce from one and to another. Okay, firstly, how much longer can Charlotte and Colborne just stare at each other? Seriously, so much staring. Lady Lydia and all her looks when her mother speaks. I just love it. I think she's my favourite side character of the season. The appearance of Georgiana's mother. It did seem a very quick acceptance from Georgiana about the fact, but I love that it gave time to add to the rising tension between Lady Montrose and Agnes, and I love to live in the land of suspension of disbelief. Speaking of which, did the mention of Falmouth give Rita a headache in the geography of this show? Oh my god. Yes. You continued. Oh, Arthur. Ah, Ralph. While we all knew he was going to get his heart broken, I loved how it was written and that he came to the realisation and let Charlotte choose, even if it felt heavy-handed and really spelt out by the other character for him. Rowley and Lady D. After listening about the idea of him being a con man in last week's podcast, I'm coming around to this way of thinking. He chooses to marry someone else for their money 50 years ago. Is he not marrying Lady Denham for her money the second time? I'm taking our carriage. Didn't like that. Performer of the episode for me went to Eloise Webb as Augusta. Her face and reaction towards Edward leaving made me feel so sad for her. Is Edward redeemed? Still no. I still can't get past the drugging and manipulation from seasons past. He just needs to leave. I don't want any more screen time taking up with him in the finale. Susan and Sam. Nice moment, nice movement to their story, but failing to see how this is necessary to the season and or overall storyline. You and me both, sis. Fun fact, in season 1, Lady Susan is referred to as Lady Worcester by Diana Parker when she's informing Tom of her arrival in Sanditon for the regatta. I told you there was a retcon. Excited to hear all your thoughts and musings, as well as other postcards from Sanditon. Looking forward to a wedding next week, or a double wedding, because they haven't done that 1995 Pride and Prejudice storyline yet. From Come On Eileen and Perth. In this moment, you mean everything. Shell shouldn't have left me alone. I'm just going slowly out of my mind. Okay. Hello, postcards from Sanditon podcast hosts and fellow Sanditon viewers. Here are my episode 5 musings. Well, while watching season 3 episode 3 and 4, I felt as if the writers were dragging me through a steeplechase, possibly backwards, and was pretty beat up by Verhebel making so little progress towards a reconciliation. I had to come to the conclusion that season 2 should have been 8 or 10 episodes long, ending the series with a wedding, versus stringing us along in a third season only to have our emotions trampled upon and our hopes dashed again. However, episode 5 was less distressing to me, perhaps just because we are rounding the final lap, so storylines have to start working out. My biggest worry was that Charlotte and Alexander would sit in silence in the carriage all the way to Falmouth, when I wanted them to confess and resolve all, away from interruptions and prying eyes. The best thing about episode 5 was that Alexander handled the crisis with Augusta so skillfully. Alexander has matured into a loving guardian, able to take the lead in managing that confrontation in order to build Augusta's confidence and trust that he will support her from now on. Of course, none of this would have been possible without Charlotte having come into his life, bringing her huge heart, keen mind, and wisdom beyond her age. Alexander was too wounded even at the end of season 2 to be a good husband to Charlotte and father to his girls. Now he is worthy of Charlotte, and chapter 2 of his life can unfold. I asked you, what better match could he make? By the way, thank you for participating, Lydia. Your parting gift is a tiny lock of Hannibal's mane. Set it in a very fine ring. Now, some musings about selected characters and storylines. Alexander Colborne. Emotional growth? Yes, please. Facial hair growth? No, thank you. I agree with last week's Postcard writer Robin from Boston, who pleaded, Alexander, please shave. In season 1, only the leading man, Sydney, was scruffy and unshaven. All other men were clean-shaven, as would have been in the times. So I'm not surprised that season 2's leading man was also stubbly and scruffy. But in season 3, it had gotten entirely out of hand. Alexander is absolutely forested, even down the neck. He wasn't even that hairy when he wolf-kissed Charlotte under the tree. Poor Charlotte's tender, dewy English skin. I beg you, Xander, at least please shave on your wedding day. And one more thing. Please throw out those Buzz Lightyear boots that you've been wearing since season 2. They even took on a strange cast of silver when you and Samuel appeared at the Trafalgar House parlour entrance. Does a leading man not deserve well-fitting boots? On the positive side, you looked very dashing. From the boots up in Falmouth, especially having stayed up all night. I stayed up all night writing these musings, and I look like a haint. What is a haint? I'm going to Google haint. A haint is a type of ghost or evil spirit that originated in the beliefs and customs of the Galagishi people, descendants of African slaves who lived predominantly in the Low Countries and on the barrier islands of the coast of the Carolinas, Georgia, and North Florida. I did not know that. Who said this podcast isn't educational? The brothers Colborne, Major to you, Colborne and Ugwood. Credit to the clever person who shipped that name. Ugwood is amazing. I really admired the cinematography of the opening scene of the brothers racing back to the house on horseback to find Augusta. I love the sweet scene in which Leonora confesses a secret on the stairs to help Augusta, just as Augusta did on Leo's behalf in season 2. If I understand correctly, Leo confessed that Augusta told her that she was going to run away to Falmouth. I cannot figure out how Augusta would have known which city, as Edward only mentioned that they would have to escape when Augusta said to Edward, I'm asking you to rescue me. He said, where would we go? When later Augusta asked Edward, when will I see you again? He only said if she would attend Miss Lamb's party and told her it would be enough to see your face one last time, as he was resolved to leave Sanditon. Did I miss a detail somehow? No, I think you just found a good old-fashioned plot hole. Yeah, you're one of us. Samuel Colborne, please present Act 2 of your zany performance with Leo, you cur. I could eat you both up with a spoon. I love that Samuel has come back home and reconciled with Xander, and in the process broadened Xander's world by encouraging him to reconnect with the town and the community. I love that Samuel's finding his place again in his childhood home, warmly welcomed by Mrs. Wheatley, and redeveloping a strong relationship with the girls. I imagine that his other relationships in London have been superficial and that he yearns for more meaningful connections as those he has recently developed at Hayrick Park and Sanditon. No wonder he does not want to go back to London to unchallenging work, and in my humble opinion, I do not think that he has the interrogation skills to argue more significant cases in court, as we saw with his cross-examination preparation of Georgiana. The writers/show just did not develop that storyline with any of the dialogue well enough to demonstrate his skills. He will need to take on more serious work if he wants to entertain or perhaps make a life with Lady Susan. Lady Susan and Samuel Colborne. Now that the king has cast her aside, Susan will need a friend in London with Samuel's characteristics. I just love these two together. The impromptu candlelight supper and finding out more about Lady Susan's past. Had I been Lady Susan that night, I would have undoubtedly have been persuaded that there were one or two reasons to stay in Sanditon beside Miss Hayward, those being Samuel's right eye and his left eye, followed by his upper lip and lower lip. FYI, I think that your podcast listeners would really enjoy reading the PBS Masterpiece interview of Sophie and Liam's experiences as their characters in Season 3. There's also a short vignette of Sanditon actors guessing whether or not certain statements are authentic Jane Austen quotes or not. Sophie and Liam are as charming a pair as in that game as they are on screen. Charlotte Hayward. I find it curious that Charlotte never cries when with Alexander, whether in painful circumstances or happy ones. I submit the following observations of Charlotte's tears for your consideration. 1. Cries at Georgiana's trial. 2. Cries when she meets Georgiana's mother. 3. Cries at Mary's bedside. 4. Cries when trying to and then finally breaking off the engagement with Ralph. 5. Cries when seeing Lydia stroking Hannibal's neck. Surely you all remember that. Now, I would have been sobbing in a heap on the ground after the episode 3 clifftop declaration, and with every line spoken in the carriage. And I would have made up lines to deliver in the carriage just so my eyes could well up with tears as I gazed across at Xander's. Charlotte, my advice is to run at first light to Hayrick Park and tell Xander that your engagement is off and declare your love for him, in no uncertain terms. Lock this thing down before the writers can finish someone else's storyline at Hayborn's expense. Xander will have a monogrammed handkerchief for you to use. Something tells me that you will finally need it. And now, to the show writers. Be advised that I have some demands after the penultimate episode. First, I want to hear Alexander call Charlotte by her given name and hear Charlotte's name for him, and I would like to hear that before any vows are said. Next, I want Lucy's portrait to be taken down and moved to a place of honour in Leo's room, replaced with a beautiful wedding portrait of Charlotte, wearing one of the good wigs. Last, I fear that you writers intend to have me hold a handstand at the end of a 50-metre diving platform for the first half of episode 6, while you mess about, keeping my sweeties, Alexander and Charlotte, apart for maximum drama/torture. No, show. I do not deserve that. I have been a faithful Sanditon viewer, especially of all the cliff scenes, which I will not admit to watching 50+ times. As a reward for my viewership, I insist that Charlotte and Alexander become engaged quickly in the episode, and that we see them arm in arm on the beach at sunset, fishing with Leo, reminiscing, forgiving each other, making up for missed courtship time, and planning their wedding, followed by a proper ceremony. After that, I expect to see a baby to prove that Colonel Lennox was misleading all of us about Alexander's inability to provide comfort. Should these demands not be fulfilled, be advised that there is a Parker's bathing machine in position on the beach, staffed full of rotten eggs, which will be launched over Trafalgar House forthwith. I remain entitled, but in a most respectful way, Elizabeth of North Carolina. Elizabeth, are you a lawyer? Because I felt like that was a more well-structured argument than I've ever seen presented on this show. Okay, hello ladies. I was surprised by the amount of people that were astounded by Charlotte's advice to Augusta. Telling her to follow her heart without having the whole picture first due to her personal dealings is essentially exactly what she did with Georgiana and Otis in season 1. I know, I think we expect her to learn, but Before I start my rambling on the latest episode, where does one purchase Georgiana's green coat? I'm interested. Now let's begin with the easier ones first. Lady D and Mr. Price. That man's a walking red flag. Sure, it's our carriage, but in my house, you can do only minor adjustments. And by the way, buddy, after all these years apart, you should be the one to want to be traipsing up and down the country to be with her. Her reluctance to leave Sanditon makes me hopeful she won't follow through with this engagement. It just occurred to me, is this the theme of season 3? Broken engagements. Interesting. Moving on. The SS Samsu, or Suborn as it's apparently named. No, we're sticking with Samsu. Let Michelle have this. I'm so content. Smiley emoji. That's pretty much it. And I did appreciate Lady Susan's backstory. Now, indulge me for a minute, given that the cast and crew have described season 3 as more persuasion-like and the fact that Samuel and Alexander share the same last name, do we think there's a misunderstanding of Mr. Colborne is engaged coming our way? Yes. Like when Anne thought Captain Wentworth was engaged to Louisa. Yeah. Tom and Mary. Let's have the female characters suffer for the male character to grow. Just no. We can't have Mary being the reason for Tom to change his mind. It has to be his own decision, because even if she does get well, and I really hope she does, nothing can guarantee us that he won't go and do something stupid the moment the next opportunity presents itself. And you know how I know, because we've been through this twice already. I swear, if she dies in the name of this trope, I will riot. Now, having said that, Tom's slow-mo running up the stairs did make me misty-eyed. It could have been due to the rest of the episode making me susceptible, but still it worked. Lady Montrose. I hate the way she treats Agnes. Now I understand why I found her so perplexing. She's a masterfully constructed villain. Like the more dangerous ones, she knows how to depict the truth in a way that will seem correct. That is how she justifies everything she does, because in her mind, she's right. Georgiana and her mother. A black woman enters the promenade, and so does the plot. Who didn't see that revelation coming? First of all, oh my god, that woman's beautiful. The more stoically she stood and talked to Georgiana, without emotionally pressuring her and respecting the distance while matter-of-factly sharing her story, the more I was being convinced of her legitimacy. Then, of course, the necklace confirmed it, but was anyone else left wondering how G was conceived? Because the impression I got was not of a consensual relationship. We have been saying this. Now I understand why you ladies wanted Georgiana to find her mother on her own. I did too. But if she is to follow a true Jane Austen's heroine path and get happily married at the end, I'm afraid Otis is the only candidate still standing. Therefore, I also understand why they did this. There were so many things left for him to redeem himself for and to be worthy of her, but he's your mother, and I ask nothing in return because your happiness is all that matters to me, is as close to Darcy as he could pull off. Arthur and Harry. Georgiana's offering was something not very unusual for the time, but Arthur loves her too much to accept something like this, and unlike Tom, he does have dignity. I love the Tom shade. Okay. Continued. He won't be condemning his best friend to a lifelong suffering for his own pleasure. I know Harry was desperate and that he meant well when he asked him to be discreet, but it did make my skin crawl. What is to become of these two? I hope for the best. Ralph. He knew the engagement was over the moment he let her get in that carriage. I must admit, seeing Charlotte entering the breakup room and only him standing there, it made me so ecstatic for what was to follow. I'm sorry, Ralph, but it was not meant to be. I'm sure you'll find someone who would care for you. How can I skip Ogward? I'll start by saying excellent performances from both actors. I never thought I'll come to say this, but I suppose I must thank Edward for forcing Hayborn into each other's company, especially when he was the reason Sydney's proposal was cut short in season 1, and therefore ruining Charlotte's first chance to a happily ever after. Watching him towering over Augusta was so creepy. When they kissed, I hissed. Can we not have this grown-ass man kissing someone that only a year ago was still a child? Please. And yes, I know it was normal back then. Still, it doesn't make it any better, especially given the conception of this so-called romance. You could tell Augusta was insecure about the decision she's made when she needed to hear Edward say he loved her. What I heard was, give me a reason to justify my actions. And is it just me, or is that I love you more than I loved another breathing soul? The lowest standard ever, coming from someone who never loved another breathing soul. I hope there are no people who found this romantic. Well, I have some bad news for you. People be mad. Jack Fox did a great job showing us his character is finally realising what he's doing to this girl is wrong. Those little back steps he took when Augusta confronted him meant so much. Who would have thought he had feelings all along? And probably for the first time in his life, he's putting someone else's well-being over his own. Sorry, he couldn't do that for his son. Listen, I don't think he's redeemed from what he did. When you have so many negatives, putting one positive in the equation doesn't change the outcome. But I think now he can begin to work on it because of it. That bastard even made me cry when he said I'm incapable of feeling. As for Eloise Webb, I'll just stand in applause. And last but definitely not least, Hayborn. I believe by now my partiality on the subject is very clear, but I won't even pretend. I loved every interaction, every second of their screen time. They actually talked of their situation, through projection of course, but the end justifies the means, and Charlotte did tell him 5 times indirectly that she loves him. Speaking of Charlotte, guess what? She's back, and here's what I mean. 1, taking accountability for what she said to Augusta. 2, being resourceful as to how and where they should search for her, blowing Xander's mind in the process. 3, giving good advice this time. Allow her niece to make her own choice, even if you don't approve. Support her. And 4, taking none of the patriarchy's nonsense when reprimanding him of the usage of the word ruined. Once again, challenging society's norms and expectations of women. I love her so much. Side note, for the life of me, I cannot understand why they felt the need to mirror their first carriage scene. It was so weird. First time watching, I spent the majority of it wondering what was wrong with their faces. Why did Alexander's Colborne's chin keep glitching, and how the fuck did their legs fit in there? If the camera doesn't fit to have them across from each other, then don't do it. Or just build a set of the carriage like many others have done before. I had to watch it a second time to actually hear what was being said between them. It was a pity because it was great dialogue. Anyway, on to Xander. I know some people won't like what I'm about to say, but here it goes. His I do not doubt it to Charlotte. If I'd have known first, then I would have never encouraged her. Took me back to the first season where our heroine joined by a different gentleman in very similar circumstance, said she and Otis didn't mean to put Georgiana in harm's way, and his response was, and yet you both did. I couldn't help but be reminded of how much I disliked Sydney because of his temper. I know what he said was not wrong, and that's why I loved him. He was just a bit of a dick. I'm a firm believer in not putting others down when we feel bad, but I digress. You must be some kind of saint. I firmly believe in being a bitch to everyone. People, find someone who listens to you the way Alexander listens to Charlotte, even if it pains him, swoons. I love what he says to Augusta. It must have meant so much to her hearing him praise her, considering that not that many months ago she felt like a burden to him. And lastly, about the scene. 49 seconds of no dialogue, and 45 of just staring and holding hands. Let me stress this a bit more. Nearly a minute-long scene, and not a single word was uttered, yet promises were made. His unwillingness to let go, unsure if that would be the last time he would see her, was so apparent. And when he said goodnight instead of goodbye, it radiated hope. petition to have a whole 53 minutes episode of Rose and Ben just staring at each other, anyone. I cannot believe there's only one episode left. But this one I thoroughly enjoyed. Most likely because it gave the main characters more screen time than the previous ones. I can just say, finally. I'm looking forward to your views. Best wishes, KK from Cyprus. Thank you. Okay. As you can tell, I'm starting to get a little angsty and fidgety. My ADHD brain is like, please do something other than read aloud. So is this the last one? No. Okay. We continue. Oh, fucking hell. What did I sign myself up for? Hi, Michelle and Rita. I can't believe we're almost at the end of Sanditon. I'll miss the show dearly and miss your podcasts of the show. But I'm excited to listen to your other podcasts. Episode 5 is my favourite episode of the season so far. My favourite line of the episode came from Charlotte, talking about Augusta. She'll not be ruined. She'll be the same Augusta she ever was. No less part of your family and no less deserving of your love. It was a really powerful moment. I still do not know that Edward is redeemed. I like what Justin Young said in an article that it's a whisper of redemption. But Jack and Eloise were fabulous in this episode. Georgiana got her mother back. Loved seeing that and their frank conversations. I loved that Otis helped her find her mum but did not insert himself into their reunion. He didn't show up with her and go look at how awesome I am. I also loved that green coat Georgiana wore on the beach. I also loved the interactions between Agnes, Charlotte and Mary. It was really touching. I loved that Arthur stood up for himself when speaking to Georgiana and Harry. Even if it meant not potentially being with Harry, I do hope Harry and Arthur can work something out. Lady Montrose is the worst. As we saw at the end of the episode, it's clear that is all about Georgiana's money for her. Last week's episode, I was not sure about Mr. Price, and I definitely don't like him with Lady D now. Lady D either needs to put her foot down about staying in Sanditon or dump Mr. Price at the altar. I don't know that I needed Mary to get sick, but apparently Tom needs a massive wake-up call, and this is it. I hope Mary won't die at the last episode, but if she does, I hope that she will haunt Tom as a ghost forever. I loved the scenes with Lady Susan and Samuel. It was nice to hear more of her backstory. Also, little Leo is precious, and I love her connection with her uncle. The breakup scene in the breakup room with Charlotte and Ralph was very touching. I like that way of them parting. It felt more respectful, even though it would hurt him immensely. Great job by Rose and Kai. Love the proud dad-uncle moment of Xander telling Augusta she is remarkable. And last but not least, Charlotte and Xander. Lots of great scenes in the carriage. Clearly they were talking to each other about their own situation, not just Augusta. I loved how his speech to Augusta at the inn clearly included Charlotte as he looked back and forth between the two of them. The music and filming of when Xander said he must respect Charlotte's decision made me cry. Last but certainly not least, that hand held in front of Trafalgar House. Wow. The chemistry for these two is off the charts. It was beautiful and sexy, and the music heightened the experience. I cried my eyes out. Well, there's a lot to wrap up next week, so we shall see how it goes. All the best, Eve from Hawaii. Dear Michelle and Rita, well, you caught it. Mary's ill. We definitely knew how this was going to play out when Tom stormed off on his business deal. After being so condescending to his wife. Did not think Charlotte seeing Tom's despair at Mary's sickbed would be the catalyst to get her to realise she would not go through with marrying her sad sack fiancé. Before that, it was so good to see Charlotte back on form, giving her opinion and guiding Colborne when they were on the hunt for Edward and Augusta. But I wanted so many scenes to play out longer. Both them in the carriage, Edward and Augusta at the inn, Georgiana and her mum. I hate when we drop in on people when they have been together for hours already, and we're seemingly seeing things in conversations that should have started at the beginning of their journey. Oh, and I would love to know where this glorious lost forest is between Sanditon and Falmouth. I almost wanted their carriage to have a breakdown somewhere along the way so they could just stare at each other longer in these gorgeous surroundings. I loved seeing Lady Denham's wheels turning as she realised that marrying Mr. Price not only resulted in her losing her title, but her prominent place in Sanditon. Shotgun wedding in a week. Moving to London. Yikes. I do hope she's going to change her mind. He's definitely a fraud, right? Finally, as much as I enjoyed Lady de Clement's more prominent role this season and her chemistry with Samuel is great, I just wanted more time with Georgiana. Finally meeting her mum and maybe coming to realise that marrying the Duke is not going to lead to the safety she thinks it will. I think it's going to be so rushed. I wanted to slap her when she told Arthur if he couldn't marry him, why shouldn't she? She is being incredibly selfish. Mad respect to you both for breaking down all these episodes. Thank you again for all the time you put into this endeavour. Oh, Denise. This is from Denise, by the way. I'm feeling very tired now because I've been talking to myself too long and I'm going a bit crazy. And this is Denise from Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu. Sorry, but I loved hearing you both stumble over that last week. I love when people troll us. You can just say south of Montreal, Quebec, if that helps. I mean, I've already embarrassed myself, Denise. Okay, is this the final one? Final one! Oh, we've made it to the end, guys. We did it together. Okay, hello, ladies. Again, I just wanted to tell you both how much I appreciate your podcasts, your intellect, your humour, and your knowledge. I enjoy the emails from other listeners with their perspectives on Sanditon's story and characters. They're an impressive bunch. I'm beginning to mourn the end of this show. Here are my thoughts this week. 1, I saw this on Twitter, and not sure if others saw this too, while trying to avoid spoilers. If you look at the carriage scene with Charlotte and Xander as they head to Falmouth, the scene/film is reversed, meaning that if you look closely, Xander's part for his hair is on the opposite side. Someone on Twitter posted these scenes. At first glance, I had difficulty understanding, although I felt watching that scene Xander didn't look as good. As I rewatched, I saw the difference. Now when you watch the carriage scene, when they return with Augusta, his hair/bangs are correct. From what I understand, this was an editing issue. Someone on Twitter has been able to post the first as it should. Maybe someone else in this group knows what I mean. I did not notice this, but you're all more eagle-eyed than me. 2. I really did like this episode. Lots going on, but I think this is my favourite so far, except for the cliff makeout session, of course. 3. Love Georgiana's green coat with the fur trim when she was talking about with her mother. Now my dog's shaking. With her mother on the beach. 4. Love Georgiana's mum's strength and kindness standing up to Lady Montrose too. 5. Lady Montrose back to being mummy dearest. 6. Lady Susan and Samuel. Love them and their kiss. Would love to see a series with their characters. 7. Love the way Samuel was able to get info out of Leo using his lawyer skills. 8. Awkward. Awkward scenes were so creepy. When Edward listened to Colborne tell Augusta she can marry Edward, one could see Edward's facial features changing. He was Dr. Jekyll becoming Mr. Hyde. Such good acting by Jack Fox. Love him. Loathe Edward. I do think deep down Edward loves Augusta. Ugh. But he knew he was destroying her at some point. I think I realised this when he was talking with Lady D, saying of course he's incapable of loving, but there was pain there in his face. Eloise Webb, the actress who plays Augusta, is so impressive. Looking forward to seeing her in the future. 9. I still would like to know more about Lydia's old flame, but we ain't got time left to fit all that in. 10. Still don't trust Mr. Price, even more after this episode. 11. Arthur and Harry. I don't see a happy ending. Would love to see one. 12. Glad Ralph is gone. Took long enough, but he did pull at my heartstrings with him telling Charlotte he loved her. 13. Colborne and Charlotte's staring session and holding hands. What these two actors can do with their eyes and body actions is fantastic. 14. Mary can't die. I don't see this happening. Thanks again, Robin from Boston. Thanks for that, Robin. Okay, so that's all from us this week. I'm sure you're sick of me. I'm sick of hearing my own voice. We'll be back discussing episode 6 the finale next week. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram for updates. We're in the Books Network. You can also email us if you want to be read out in the Postcards feature. Then please email us at inthebooksnetwork@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends and give us a rate and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.